Okay, one down and yo, telling my guys, it's Big Riz. Okay, so this one's quite special to me. So this is Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro, and the reason why it's so special to me, at least, is that it's actually one of the first games that I've ever played, ever. It's definitely the first Spider-Man game I've played, but it's on the PS1. Yeah, PS1. There were only a couple of games that I actually remember playing. There was this one Shrek game and Toy Story 2, I think it was, and this. So this one's quite special to me because this is the first in this project where I get to go back and play a game, unlike with the first game where I was playing it for the first time. Um, and I was actually quite excited to see how much of at least the first couple of levels I would actually even remember, because I never completed this game in my first playthrough 15 years ago. But my plan was to essentially treat it like how I would treat most sequels. Generally speaking, sequels end up doing better or end up being better than the originals, generally speaking. So what do you get when you have the sequel to a game with phenomenal level design, great character work, at least the way the relationships are between Spider-Man and the other co-characters, and you turn it into a sequel? Long story short, more of the same. And there were a few factors as to why I think they just essentially made the same game and repackaged it into another disc. And that's because this game was made in 2001. And in 2001, the PlayStation 2 was already out for a year. And with the second generation being out already, and with the following year, another huge Spider-Man project was being released by Sony, I can see why Activision probably put their focus more into the new thing and kind of took it away from the old thing. But even with that being said, more of a good thing isn't a bad thing. In fact, there are some ways in which this game actually improves from the last game, and one new feature, which I don't think I've seen been repeated until the Spider-Man PS4 game, and we'll get to that. But yeah, let's check it out, because this is actually a really big nostalgia factor for me, because it's my first game ever, and it's not a bad game. It's just the same game. I would say my biggest gripe for this game stems from the fact that this is not made by the same developer. This is made by a company called Vicarious Visions, and where the previous developers, Neversoft, went on to make a bunch of really good Tony Hawk games. Vicarious Visions made all the Game Boy Color and PSP variants and ports of Neversoft's previous games. They made the Game Boy Color version of the previous Spider-Man game, and they end up making all the Game Boy, Nintendo DS, and PSP variants of all of Neversoft's future Tony Hawk games. And I guess it doesn't really matter now that all these video game developers are making Call of Duty games for Activision. It kind of shows this a level of care they put into making this sequel. This company then, before then, and even after then, are just known for, or essentially just hired for, making ports of other really good games on lesser hardware. But like I said, this game isn't terrible. In fact, one of the biggest changes is there actually is a graphics increase in the textures of all the characters in the environment around you. Most notably, Spider-Man finally has the web design all over his costume. Not even that, but also the costumes that you can play with also have more detailed designs all over. And the other notable difference is that each of the levels seem to be just much bigger in scale, and this is generally what happens when you look at a game that was made on a previous console during the end of its generation. The development teams for these games just have a better understanding of the hardware that they're working with. And I don't know who's responsible for this, whether it be Activision because they wanted to focus on the next generation of games, or the developers just not having the same, I don't know, vision and design as the previous developers. I guess they were tasked with not necessarily making a better game, but a bigger game. For people that still have a PS1 and not a PS2, who are going to get essentially a much bigger, much better game coming out literally at the end of that year. But having bigger areas with the PS1 limitations can be a double-edged sword, as they have a few levels where you have to sort of just find things around you, and with no camera control, small render distance, swinging basically being non-existent, keeping you grounded, and sometimes the compass not being there, like this first level, which I actually really liked because you're just doing small street crime stuff, and this bomb level, which even now I got really stuck on because I just couldn't find the bombs or just didn't know where to go. And although this is not a massive level, this plane mission with the passed out pilot in the plane really annoyed me, because you have to essentially web up the propellers quickly or it will sway to one side, or if it reaches the end of the hangar or touches enough of these red barrels, the plane will explode, failing the mission. I really hated this mission. And yes, I do understand this is from limited technology, but the previous developers understood that and they sort of accounted for that. Like, just small things like the vents in the first level of the previous Spider-Man game to let you know that there is something above you to zip up to. There was a level exactly like that, which I just got stuck on running around because I couldn't see the ceiling, and I didn't know there was a vent up there. I didn't have any indications. They completely left out that feature, which it's small and not many people would pick up on that, but I did, and it's just one of those things that just shows just the level of care, like I've mentioned before, with how the previous game was made compared to this one. On top of that, there were a couple of levels that just seemed like reskins of levels from the previous game, such as this Hammerhead boss battle, which is basically just Rhino with a Tommy gun. You have to like move out of the way just as he charges towards you. Or there's one just before you get to Sandman where you have to solve the exact same puzzle in the Venom mission in the previous game to open the door. Oh, and the worst example of copying the homework but changing it just so it doesn't look bait is this level where you are in some form of control room where you are introduced to a new enemy type, which are being made in this room, and you have to destroy the thing that creates these enemies, but it's not a big deal because you get a new web type that makes dealing with these enemies super easy. Wait, I feel like I've seen this before. But there are some things that they kept the same that I do, like how they kept Stan Lee on to narrate the game, which I will never complain about. Ever.
Hey there, Spidey fans. These guys look like they're up to no good. Well, luckily Spidey's on the scene to make them realize the error of their ways. But watch out, Webhead. This time you may be in over your head.
But I will complain about how the spider armor is the exact same in this game. They did not change it one bit. It does the exact same things, doubles your health, and they couldn't have found anything else. They didn't find anything else to symbolize armor in this game or doubling your health. Nothing. But hey, look, I'm not going to spend the entire rest of the video just hating on the game because it's just so much similar to the predecessor. Especially when a game's coming from Activision, you can't expect much when it comes to innovation and sequels. But I will explain everything I like about the game. For one, some of the levels are actually pretty well done. For example, there's this one puzzle where there's a heat sensing barrier and you have to keep the temperature of the room to match Spider-Man's body temperature so that the sensors can't pick him up. The lizard boss battles are actually really cool. You have to like do a puzzle to develop a cure before the lizard comes into the room, and if you don't complete the puzzle in time, there's no game over screen, but instead the lizard will just overpower you until you die. It's impossible to complete the mission if you do not complete the puzzle in time. Instead of each level starting off with a comic strip, it's actually a newspaper article from the Daily Bugle, and the side ads or the side parts of the newspaper are actually filled with Easter eggs, and failing the mission will give you a different newspaper with different Easter eggs, which I think is pretty cool. And when you finish the game, it says that Thor saved the day instead of Spider-Man. I don't know why, but he does reference it at the end.
What the? Now what's this all about? Ugh, I need a new agent.
Some other cool Easter eggs in this game is that how Spider-Man references Batman at one point.
What was it that Thug said? Hangar 18, right? There's a Hangar 18 at the airfield. I don't need pointy ears and a cape to figure out that this is probably another heist.
Which I don't think Marvel will ever be allowed to do that again. Oh no, wait, the love of my life already did that.
So dark? You sure you're not from the DC universe?
Oh, and there was that time that Stan Lee did a cameo in a DC movie.
Hey everybody, look at me. I'm Stan Lee, doing my subtle cameo.
Excuse me, Mr. Stan.
This is a DC movie?
There's like this new training slash like challenge room, which is hosted by Professor X from the X-Men. And I will say this again. Where did Arkham get this idea from? Oh, and the last Easter egg from this game is in the final cutscene. When you send Shocker and Electro and everyone else to prison at the end of the game, the final cutscene shows that across the cell from them is all the bad guys from Spider-Man 1. So Dr. Octopus is still banging his head on the jail cell. They're still playing Go Fish. Oh, they're trying to figure out how to play Go Fish. With the game being called Enter Electro, there is no surprise as who the final boss is. But what they did this time, and it's the same what they did last time with the Carnage Dr. Octopus, is that they have a Hyper Electro, which is an exclusive variant of this character to this game, which I think is really nice. The last level of this game was actually supposed to take place on top of the World Trade Centers, but they had to redesign the location because, you know, they didn't want to have the Twin Towers. I actually don't know if this caused any delays, but I mean, I think that's just a little Easter egg that I found out whilst doing research for this game. And my number one favorite feature in this game, one thing that I don't think has come back since I think 2018, is along with having more suits with better detailing, each suit has its own power-up attached to it, like invincibility or double damage or, you know, triple jumping or things like that. If you like a particular suit but you don't like the abilities, or vice versa, if you like the abilities of a suit but you don't like the way it looks, there is a create a spider mode that allows you to attach any 3 abilities onto a costume of your choosing. That's something that we will see later, but not until like a good over 10 years later. And that's my favorite feature. I think the ability to just customize your character within limitations is something that makes, you know, a sequel. You know, you add things to it and you make things better, which is why I don't hate this game, especially considering this is one of my first games. But with all of its flaws, I actually think this is a really solid game. So yeah, that was Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro, one of the first games that I've ever played in my entire life. The next series of videos is actually the videos that encouraged me to, or inspired me to make these videos in the first place. You already know what it is if you know what happened in 2002 with Spider-Man. But yeah, I didn't really do an outro in my last video, and I kind of regret not doing that. But yeah, if you guys did appreciate the video, like, comment, subscribe, you already know what to do. It's Big Riz, and I'll catch you guys. I'll try to do it next week, although the last time I said that and it took like, how long has it been? Oh my god, it's been over a year? Okay, I will bring out a new video next week, I promise. I will try, because Spider-Man 2 is coming out in September or October, and I need to get these videos done before then. Okay, cool. Catch you guys later. Peace.